No CGI is really just invisible CGI part 3 of 5. Part 3 of 5. And these are actually pretty fascinating. I've been enjoying these.
CGI is lazy filmmaking, single-handedly responsible for the downfall of cinema. They use it to fake a mansion, a dangerous ravine, a space hangar, even the stormtroopers in the space hangar, or just completely synthetic shots with nothing filmed. Movie making was much more authentic in the old days when you knew they filmed everything for real. Except, of course, when they used a matte painting to fake a mansion, a dangerous ravine, a space hangar, even the stormtroopers in the space hangar.
Yep. The mapping, you would remove things, you would add things. It's been done. It's been done. The movie magic, love. The movie magic.
Completely synthetic shots with nothing filmed.
Like in the original Star Wars, when they're on Hoth, guess what? The backgrounds are paintings. They were paintings. They were painted by one person. That's fake. It's not real. It's not a practical location. It's a painting, and the things were done in studio.
Or just this regular-ass room, which is a complete painting just because it's cheaper than wood. You know, movie magic.
Movie magic.
My name is Jonas, and welcome to part 3 of No CGI is Really Just Invisible CGI. Please remember to check out parts 1 and 2. Did you know that Warner Brothers is so afraid to talk about visual effects that they'll erase the blue screens from their behind-the-scenes footage? Today's going to be super nerdy. We're going to talk about what is CGI.
Seriously? Oh my gosh, because people take offense. People don't like realizing that what they enjoy is fake. It's nuts. It's nuts. You pay actors to pretend to be people. What's wrong with the worlds they're living in being pretend? It's nuts. It's nuts. You need templates. You need locations for practical things. But in the end, they're just, oh my gosh. People go crazy.
What is visual effects? I'll show you that CGI has nothing on matte painting when it comes to lazy filmmaking, and we'll take the nerdiest deep dive into every single visual effects in Oppenheimer. For all my ranting against bad journalism, I really want to thank the Hollywood Reporter for inventing VFX Barbie, who comes with unionization flyers and all-male co-workers. Directors will ignore her very existence.
Oh my gosh. I love this. If this was real, I'd probably get a Barbie doll just because. If this was real, the green screen Barbie. Watch as the directors pretend she doesn't exist.
Unless critics point out the VFX is bad and they'll throw her under the bus. On point, Hollywood Reporter. On point. Greta Gerwig's super hit Barbie was another miracle of old-school filmmaking, with everyone writing that there is no CGI in Barbieland. Greta Gerwig decided to forgo CGI and took a bold stance against modern filmmaking by refusing to use CGI.
Gerwig and company employed old-school filming techniques, avoiding CGI in favor of practical in-camera effects.
Barbieland was built and shot at Warner Brothers Studios in England, and a massive effort was put into building everything as a plastic fantastic toy world, ready to film with no visual effects needed.
The funny thing is, in a movie like Barbie, where everything's supposed to be plastic, CGI is incredibly easy. That you wouldn't even notice. You wouldn't even notice.
This was backed up by set decorator Katie Spencer. Everybody knows what's CGI. Your sixth sense will tell you. Even children will know. The Guardian concluded that Barbie was leading an anti-CGI backlash by using techniques exactly as they would have done in the 1910s. Straight up featuring a set photo with a blue screen in it. You don't know how hard it is to key a blue screen on black and white film until you've tried it. You may have wondered how these scenes fit into these sets.
Yes, that is true. That is absolutely true. Black and white trying to do a blue screen. Oh my gosh.
Here's what Barbie's first assistant editor Nick Ramirez and VFX editor Matt Garner have to say about the visual effects.
Maybe 2,000 shots in the movie and a good 1,400, 1,500 were VFX shots. So 3/4 of the film were processed through VFX.
3/4 of Barbie is visual effects shots. So where did they go if everything was practical? The background walls were originally intended to be filmed as is, to look deliberately artificial, as in The Wizard of Oz. But Framestore's production VFX supervisor Glenn Pratt says to Post Perspective, all that evolved once we got into post, and Greta felt it would look more charming if, rather than being a painted cyclorama, it was actually a 3D CGI placement of buildings. DOP Rodrigo Prieto tells British cinematographer, at one point we discussed doing a lot of it with miniatures, but there wasn't time to build all of them. Glenn Pratt also told Animation World Network, miniatures were constructed for key sections of Barbieland, which allowed visual effects to scan them with photogrammetry and convert them into CG assets that could be used for set dressing. There are over 700.
The funny thing is they pushed themselves. They ended up making more work for the VFX artists by putting this background in instead of just using a blue or green screen from the beginning. If they just used a screen from the beginning, it would have been easier, because then you have to worry about like the cloud, about how the shadows are cast, about how, because the texture is different. When you have blue sky, white clouds, it starts blending into the pink, that it becomes more difficult to try, that you're re-rendering and re-rendering and re-rendering and re-rendering just to get rid of it all.
Shots of Barbie Land, which are either entirely CG or needed a lot of additional CG work to finish the picture. I don't see Greta taking any bold stance against CGI here. In fact, she's quite open about it.
It was also about, if we were going to do VFX extension of a space, is keeping in the imperfections that would have been there if we had doubled the space and built it in forced perspective.
For a director who's never done a big visual effects production before, Greta Gerwig has an unusually clear sense of how she wants to use it. She wants the CGI to look specifically like their fake sets and background would have looked if they'd had a much bigger set to work with. Which is probably why it looks so good. Even the film's production designer didn't realize they were using a lot of CGI as opposed to build everything.
The reason why we built everything is because built everything as opposed to doing a lot of CGI.
There are a lot of Barbies in Barbie Land, including Teen Talk Barbie, Growing Up Skipper Barbie, Video Girl Barbie, and Mocap Barbie. A team of mocap actors worked with Framestore to capture animation for the completely CG Kens and Barbies that populate Barbie Land in the White Shots. Where Barbie's house was built as an amazing set, and from an actor's point of view, there's no reason to assume any VFX were involved. But as you can see, that's not exactly how it ended up in the final film. The promos show you that the basis of the house was a fantastic miniature, and it really was. But what they don't mention is that in Wide Shots, it's a completely CG environment. Barbie driving through Barbie Land were shot on Lux Machina's volumetric V stage at Warner Studios, with real-time CG houses in the background and a CG replacement of the ground. The beach scenes were primarily blue screen, says Glenn Pratt, as was the transportation scene with Ken and Barbie in the car, with the landscape going into the distance being entirely CG. But wait, if these scenes were filmed on a blue screen, why does the behind-the-scenes footage show it as an in-camera effect? Holy...
Quick replacement. A quick replacement.
If you are an I can always spot a bad effect type of person, and let's face it, that's why you're here, you can spot a bad key when you see one. This scene was filmed on blue screen. There is a blue screen here, and you can see they've badly removed it and inserted the desert back.
They just did a quick cueing, and they just were like, blue, remove the blue in the background. That's all they did. Because that's the thing. They need to do touch-ups. They always have to touch up. So if it was a drawn background, it would have been even worse, because they would have had to render several passes to remove the background before they could just do a quick blue screen removal.
To look like one of the production department's backdrops. Warner Brothers has done a complete blue screen removal on 45 minutes of bonus material, because they'd rather do that than just talk about the tens of millions of dollars of great visual effects they used for the $1 billion box office success. I wouldn't be surprised if Warner Brothers started completely banning their visual effects vendors from showing breakdowns from their films. On some shots, it was too complicated to remove the entire background, so they just despilled the blue color into gray instead. You can still see some of the blue leaking through here. Photoshopping blue screens into gray screens has been the standard for behind-the-scenes photos for quite a while. For this badass shot from Mission Impossible 3, ILM compositor Todd Desiri has shown on the corridor crew how he stitched several plates together to create the final shot. Two different versions of the promo about the stunt have been released. In the one on the right, they painted out the cable that pulled Tom into the car. The image they're viewing on the monitor is the video assist, fading two takes on top of each other. But in the one on the right, they inserted the final effect shot on the monitor, creating a narrative where Tom doesn't need cables and did the stunt with the actual explosion.
Oh my gosh.
If it could be filmed for real, it should be filmed for real, is a critique you often hear on modern films' over-reliance on CGI. And if that's your opinion, that's cool. Just know that there has never been any time in film history that would have suited you. Matte painting was to the 80s what CGI is to the present. The default way of beefing up any over-the-top science fiction or fantasy movie with synthetic images. The idea is to build as small a set as you can get away with, just big enough to get your close-ups and mediums, and create the wide shot in post because it's cheaper and easier. But sure, those were like the Marvel films of the 80s. They were fantasy films. They had no other way of getting their shots. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. The Invisible Art, which is the definitive book on matte painting, traces the matte painting back to 1905, when still photographer Norman Dawn painted on a sheet of glass to cover up some rubbish in front of a house. This technique was immediately adapted by the film industry to get enormous production value for the price of a simple painting, with particularly period pieces using it to recreate historic settings. As early as 1939, Hunchback of Notre Dame went full James Cameron, filming a plate of people moving through the street, combining it with a matte painting, which was then used as a rear projection in this shot, which was absolutely mind-blowing for 1939. Released the same year, the color film Gone with the Wind used dozens of matte paintings, but the visual effects people never made it to the credits. Effects camera operator Clarence Slifer says in The Invisible Art, producer David Selznick didn't like it to get out that we were using any kind of trick work. The minute you mention trick work, you have the idea you're trying to fool the audience. But what you're trying
But that's the thing. You are. That's the goal. To make it seamless. To make it absolutely seamless.
to do is give the audience a better picture that tells the story better. Studios not giving proper credit to the visual effects people and pretending everything was filmed practically.
So it's just the VFX team. Poor guys have always been getting kicked since the start of film. Since the very beginning, they've always been getting kicked. Always.
No way. The 1944 war drama Since You Went Away used matte paintings throughout the film to save money by shooting a lot of the film in the same studio and transforming it into different locations with matte paintings. Only the window here is real and everything else is a matte painting. In the film, it is further combined with rear projection to put this girl in this tree in front. Authors Mark Cotterbass and Craig Barron write in The Invisible Art, in the digital age, they call it virtual sets, with actors placed into entirely synthetic environments. But matte painting had always been creating such environments. Speaking of World War II, even propaganda films like these, designed to show the US military's overwhelming might, used matte paintings to exaggerate the number of B-17 bombers ready to deploy. The 1947 film Black Narcissus takes place in a monastery in India, but the production never left the studios in England, relying entirely on
Never made it to India. The film never made it to India, but it was shot there.
matte paintings by Walter Percy Poppaday and miniature sets to give the impression it was filmed on location. The visual effects artists were uncredited, and DOP Jack Cardiff, who won an Oscar for Best Cinematography,
So the people who traveled there to take the photos, to actually document what the place looked like, are probably not giving credit either.
says in The Invisible Art, I'm sure many people thought it was my photography, and perhaps I wouldn't have gotten the Oscar if they had known Poppaday had painted the beautiful matte shots. Matte paintings are to Alfred Hitchcock what lens flares are to J.J. Abrams. He wouldn't build anything practically if he could get away with a visual effect shot. This mansion in North by Northwest is fake. It is a matte painting. This hall in his black and white thriller The Paradigm Case can barely be called a set build. Almost everything is a matte painting just because it's cheaper than wood. As is the staircase in the following scene. This prison background is added in post. And this entire room is literally just a painting. This one is my favorite. Paul Newman just low-key strolling through a museum in Hitchcock's thriller Torn Curtain. The set is just the floor, and they didn't even build all of it. Look how they made a hole here between these balusters to see Newman as he walks into the room. This skyline from George Roy Hill's The Sting is a matte painting. For the cemetery scene in Poltergeist, director Tobe Hooper made sure to start on these physical graves to sell us the photorealism, so we assume the ones in the wide shot are also real, even though they're all added in post, because obviously this is cheaper than rigging the whole cemetery. This skyline from Escape from New York is a matte painting, and it's painted by this dude who made this movie, where the background from the final shot is a matte painting. No reason to rig up a grand airport scene for the ending of Die Hard 2. The whole scenery is fake. This painting is extra large to allow for the camera to start close and pull back. This is a cool one. This moment from Who's That Girl looks like a dangerous stunt. In reality, the building is a matte painting with a perfect hole to allow the camera to see this miniature car and the guy who is, get this, a stop-motion puppet.
Oh my gosh. I love seeing how it was done back in the day. It's always great. It's always great. I honestly forgot, because I went to film school. Where I went for my degree. And I completely forgot about the painting a piece of glass and then recording that glass with a simple spot with everything happening in the background. I completely forgot about that practice.
You can see a slight miscoloring of these bricks because they're from the miniature, not the matte painting, to allow for the correct shadows of the moving puppet. Matte paintings were not perfectly integrated, simply because matching the black level with optical compositing was very difficult. On this set from The Empire Strikes Back, only the window behind Darth Vader is part of the build, with a blue screen behind it. The rest are part of the matte painting. In all analog releases of the film, before they touched it up, there was a visible difference in black level between his window and the rest of the windows. This was mocked in this uber nerdy in-joke in Family Guy's Something Something Dark Side, which, quite frankly, if you got this joke, you
Where it rolls down, yeah.
deserve a high five. Another limitation of the matte painting is that the camera had to be locked off with no camera movement, often breaking the moving camera of the rest of the film, as 2D tracking was virtually impossible in the days of optical compositing. Movies like Willow were presented in CinemaScope, but the matte shots were filmed in VistaVision, allowing for some wiggle room to tilt up or down in the image, helping to break free from the static camera. You could also create matte paintings larger than this canvas and paint them in a fisheye perspective, to allow for an even longer tilt-up, exactly the same as backgrounds in 2D animation films. But they were still trying to figure out how to break the camera free to move in 3 dimensions. This shot blew my mind. 3D camera tracking like this should have been impossible to pull off in 1988. In reality, only the two foreground cliffs are three-dimensional models. The rest are flat matte paintings, with the photography shining through a hole in the first one, allowing for a small camera move. It's really just an old-school 2D multiplane effect, as in animation films, but with a three-dimensional foreground. With digital compositing, it became easier to integrate matte paintings with rotoscoping, black levels, and tracking. And soon, 2D matte paintings became 3D matte paintings. And eventually, complete CGI backgrounds could be used. But the principle hasn't changed since 1905. You build a partial set for the actors and fake as
And they still call it all real.
much as you can get away with. Producers have budgets and deadlines and have at no point in film history been aware of any rule that if it could be filmed for real, it should be filmed for real. First, I gotta get one thing off my chest. I hate CGI. No, I hate the word CGI. I've said CGI more in this video series than in my entire career. Visual effects people do not say CGI all the time. It's mostly used by people who have no idea what they're talking about.
None of it's CGI.
No CGI here.
Not CGI.
In the business, we talk about 3D modeling, rigging, animation, sculpting, texture, set extensions, and simulations. We do say CGI, but mostly when talking to non-visual effects people.
Yeah, because it's like the whole thing. When you're talking about rigging, it involves like the moving of people. When you're talking about the sculptures, because sculptures can involve designing of people. But then again, when it comes to the rigging, you have to make sure the skin doesn't scrunch in on itself. That's why people are harder. When it comes to like solid objects, like 3D solid objects, much easier. Much easier. That's why I was like, oh, in Barbie, it was so much easier to just do because it's all plastic. It's just a solid object. You don't need to worry about like the movements or seeing people's skin, because everyone's played a video, or most people have played a video game where you zoom in your camera enough and then you see the eyes cutting into the back of the skull or the jawline, or when you're running around and you see your arms clipping into themselves because they're designed to be only to look a certain way. Or in some games where your arm kind of falls off and hangs off somewhere else.
Hey, Mr. CGI guy, we don't have time to move the trucks, but you can CGI them out, right? Yes, I can CGI them out. He says, fuck it. Yay! This video series is a direct comment to every time someone's...
Oh, I get it. That's a Monty Python joke.
There's no CGI, and there totally is CGI.
No CGI in the jets.
So we'll be using the word a lot. CGI is computer-generated images, as opposed to images obtained via photography. It doesn't have to be full-screen CGI. This Velociraptor is CGI, because it's a 3D computer object. Chris Pratt is photographed. This shot uses CGI. These two airplanes are photographed, but they're not in the film. They're replaced with these completely 3D computer models. They're CGI airplanes, and this shot uses CGI. But CGI doesn't have to be 3D either. The first CGI we saw in movies was not this, or 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 even this. It was the title sequence from Vertigo, where a computer program calculated these screensaver-type pixel patterns. How much computer generation does it take for a group of pixels to qualify as CGI? In compositing, you can put two layers on top of each other. This is not CGI, because although you're creating a new image, everything you see is photographed. That's not to say there's not CGI in Mad Max Fury Road, though. There is a ton of it. Everyone knows the pod race in The Phantom Menace is 100% CGI. But wait! These rocks are not completely CGI rocks, like these assets from the Quixel store that you can use in Unreal Engine. Instead, they're photos of foam props, projected onto symbol geometry as 2.5D objects that you can place in a 3D scene. Visual effects supervisor John Knoll himself describes this as a 3D matte painting. So it's a 3D matte painting CGI now. Defining exactly where CGI starts and stops is quite difficult. So let's do something easier. Susan Swerman and Charles Finance write in The Visual Effects Producer. Defining a visual effect is far from straightforward. Even the Visual Effects Society, which ought to know, hasn't come up with a satisfactory definition. John Dykstra once defined a visual effect as two or more elements of film combined into a single image. But that doesn't cut it either, because there are also in-camera effects like foreground miniatures, forced perspective, and completely artificial shots. The Visual Effects Oscar doesn't help us either, because that also includes special effects. So we can't even define visual effects, there's an Oscar for it, and we don't know what it is. Let's do something easier. Okay, this one's on you. What is practical filmmaking? Like, what qualifies a shot to be a practical shot? Is it a clip with no visual effects at all? Or can some visual effects be used for minor things, like cable removal? What if an important CG element is added, but is not a big part of the frame? Or just a shot where some element was filmed, but there could still be an overwhelming amount of CGI? Whatever your definition is, just remember these shots from Avengers Endgame have more practical photography on screen than these cockpit shots from Top Gun Maverick. Let me settle it for you. Practical photography means photographing something. It doesn't say anything about what you photograph or what is removed or added in post. For instance, what exactly do you think it means when IGN writes that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny prioritized practical effects? Spoiler, if you think it says anything about the amount of CGI in the film, you'd be wrong. Practical filmmaking is an empty buzzword that's supposed to make you think they used very little CGI or none at all. But really, it's a blank check of a statement. That just means that something was filmed, which has really always been true for most visual effects, so it means nothing.
No one else in the world is doing this level of practical filmmaking, and it may never.
And it's funny because they always show the scenes that are somewhat practical, but then everything's done in post. And the thing is, you can't entirely blame the actors because the actors see something, but they're only on set for a short period of time shooting one thing. Sure, they see the thing that's supposed to be there, like in Barbie, they saw the painted background. In Fast and the Furious, they saw the bomb rolling down the hill, but they don't know that it's been edited out and re-edited and designed completely differently. So you can't really blame them because they don't care. They don't know. They're just told to say something and they say it. Yeah, but in the end, it's like it's a tool. Like, I enjoy seeing practical effects. I think practical effects are absolutely amazing. But the thing is, if you start a little explosion, like let's say you have a propane bottle far away and then you shoot it with a gun, the explosions, well, depending on where you hit it with the bullet, it's not going to be that great. But if you add special effects to it, it'll be much bigger. It's just how you go. You always have to add more things to it.
Be done again.
But hey, Beetlejuice 2 is coming out, and it will be as practical as the first. I can't wait. This one needs no introduction. Let's jump right in. At Nolan's request to exclusively work with photographed elements, production VFX supervisor Andrew Jackson and special effects supervisor Scott Fisher collected a library of practically photographed effects, of which 100 shots ended up in the movie as filmed, and another 100 shots went to Nolan's longtime visual effects partner, DNEG, where visual effects supervisor Giacomo Mineo oversaw a team of visual effects artists working in Nuke. There's only a handful of not too specific interviews out there to go on, so the following is me trying to connect the dots and fill in the blanks with my guesses. First up, all these are small particles and bubbles in turbulent water. Disco field. Nolan goes to hyperspace. I'm guessing a camera with this macro probe lens facing down, and these reflecting particles, water drops or metal flakes, being dropped from above camera and then reversed. Look at how the particles fly in and out of a very shallow depth of field. Not all of the bokeh is in camera. They did fake depth passes in Nuke to give it the extra defocus they needed. These are sparks of molten thermite exploding when they hit the floor. This star is a whole crucible of thermite, a pot of burning metal. The thermite was reused for this shot, with particles sinking into water used upside down as the sun's corona. The birth of a star is described to Ian Fales from Befores and Afters as being created with a fire element that is wrapped around in a circle and flipped inside out and repeated multiple times over. The black hole is probably some fine particulate in black liquid, and they pulled the plug from the tank like a bathtub. At first I thought this was in camera, but there would need to be a lot of water on that table, and why doesn't it run off? I say they shot the reflection separately and tracked it onto the table. This is some kind of abstract firewall that doesn't really look like fire. My guess is various cloud tank passes added and multiplied on top of each other. They could have been distorted with turbulent noise in Nuke also. These lovely plasma balls are a direct homage to the archive footage. The core itself is probably a balloon, filmed like a miniature element. The dust in the foreground is most likely exactly this pass here. This flag is to shield off the light source from flaring into the camera, because it's only there to give backlight to the dust. This fire tendril wouldn't have been part of the balloon element, so they snipped it off the main explosion and pasted it on. The Trinity explosion itself was a large gasoline explosion, placed closer to the camera as a forced perspective solution that made it appear bigger. The bright light from the Nuke is an off-screen light source. Made carefully to mimic the real footage, I'm guessing the fire is real, the dust is a cloud tank, and the dirt in the foreground is also this dirt pass. These are various explosion elements comped onto each other for scale. This is weird. First we have a reversed explosion, and then a forwards explosion. A Tenet Easter egg, perhaps? I'm guessing miniatures. The shaking background during Oppenheimer's nervous breakdowns is done in camera, with the shaking photo of the background being projected directly back onto the background itself. It's very unusual for a studio to allow a director to be this experimental with an in-camera effect. They'd usually prefer it to be done without, so they could develop it in post. Just like these spinning particles. You can see...
But he's basically an A-list actor who's given a blank check. So he's allowed to do whatever he wants. Yeah, Christopher Nolan is one of those that's just like given a full pass on whatever he wants to do. But if it turns out great, it turns out great.
From the shutter speed here versus the shutter speed here, that it's a really long exposure in the film. The opposite of slow motion, to allow for very long trails. Which is only possible because all Cillian has to do is lie really, really still. If there was any walking or talking, it wouldn't have worked. Oppenheimer's vision of a nuclear shockwave, this looks like a simple wipe between water that reflects the sky and water that doesn't. It's either two different drone passes over water, or it's all the same pass, but with the reflection added in Nuke, and little ripples tracked on it in 3D and used for distortion. This looks like a fairly simple case of fire elements tracked into an aerial plate. Now it gets interesting. These are also fire elements wrapped around in circles and added on top of the Earth, which is probably a physical matte painting, filmed with an IMAX camera because Nolan would have insisted. The Earth could also be a miniature, some form of ball, but it would still be painted like a matte painting. This one has to be CGI, right? Not really. You can film rockets going up in the air for real, cut them out, and add them to cards in Nuke's 3D workspace, and 3D track the shot. Jackson also says they used set extensions for the film, but this is too invisible for me to even guess on. But they would have used either footage from the film or a second unit photography led by Andrew Jackson. There are 30 people in the visual effects credits on Oppenheimer, of which only 12 are artists. With 100 shots, this gives roughly an 8-to-1 shot-to-artist ratio, which is higher than usual. But on a compositing-only show, this checks out. Oppenheimer drew some unfortunate attention for allegedly omitting 80% of the visual effects people from the credits, sparking concerns that a lot of CGI was being hidden from the public. I don't know for sure what happened, but here's a theory. Knowing the film had too much skin for the Indian market, the studio added a CG dress to several scenes for this release only. And it wouldn't be only the shots with nudity, it would also be other shots for continuity. So it could be a very large number of shots. And if they want full CG, they would need artists for camera tracking, 3D animation, dress modeling, dress texture, cloth simulation, lighting, rendering, rotoscoping, and compositing. That could account for all the missing names. And if this is true, the reason they're not in the credits on the film is because the dress is not officially in the film. And for that reason, we will not be talking about the dress in this no CGI discussion. So let's get to it. The $1 million question. Did Oppenheimer use CGI? Yes or no?
Yes.
And the answer to that is a clear, unambiguous yes. Look, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. Oppenheimer is right in the gray area between definitely CGI and definitely not CGI. And even in the
even mixing practical effects is a use, because you need a VFX artist. They are the ones who are in it's not just the editing room. They're the ones who are basically pasting it together for the editor. In the end, it is VFX. It's a yes. He's a damned if he does, damned if he doesn't, because the people will be offended that he's not saying that. It is. They've always been disrespected in filmmaking throughout time. Obviously, that it's obvious just to say yes. Every film, especially nowadays, without fail, has CGI. Some kind of CGI. It's just there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Where the issue lies when people only rely on CGI for things, where it's blatantly obvious that it isn't real. That's the issue. There's nothing wrong with allowing people to see something and believe it's real, than for people to see something and be like, oh, that's completely fake.
visual effects business, people disagree about this. My honest professional answer is,
I don't care!
The artists that did it used digital visual effects tools to craft shots that sometimes came out looking so vastly different from anything that was filmed. It is hard to describe it as anything but computer graphics artistry. So to proudly go out there and claim no CGI is very misleading, because nobody really knows what that means. But what I will say is, every single example we've had in this series until now all used completely 3D rendered objects that were absolutely definitely CGI. And that is not the case with Oppenheimer. Nolan requested that all the material the visual effects team had to work with should originate from photography, and the team collaborated to be creative under those unusual restrictions. And in the spirit of that collaboration, my answer is no. Oppenheimer did not use CGI. But I will add that when your story is about the scientific unlocking of a release of energy unlike anything mankind had ever seen before, and you film it like this, if that worked for you, good for you. Me personally, I needed a little bit more.
Ding ding.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes part 3. Thank you for sticking with me so far. I have saved the most embarrassing and so cringing no CGI live for the finale of the next episode.
All right, yeah. That'll be next week. But the thing, CGI is a tool. It's always been a tool. It will always be a tool. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. Yeah, that's just how it is. That is just how it is. I like CGI. I just don't like it being a crutch for people. And a lot of people use CGI as a crutch, when it's just like, you could easily just done something practical and add CGI to just add a little touch to it. Add a small little touch to it.
You guys got a video? It's so bad.
And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Wait like that.